I just had a fascination with Japan for a very long time, and I've read lots of Japanese novels, and I've seen lots of Japanese cinema, and I just, the idea of being translated into Japanese is personally for me a great honor, and it's one of the languages that I've wanted to get to for a very long time. It really helped that I won the Booker Prize, because that then brings your book to international attention. Ultimately, I think for a prize like this, the beauty of it is that it actually allows you to meet readers, because there is an enormous reading community around the world. There are people who are brought together by the power of literature, by the revelatory power of what fiction can bring to our lives. And traveling so much, doing festivals and events all around the world, brings me face to face with so many people, and I've met thousands of readers. And you know, when you look into the eyes of somebody who tells you how much your work has impacted them, it's a very beautiful thing. What strikes me is something that comes from, which actually comes from the Zen aesthetic, which I think is embedded into Japanese culture. At least it's embedded in many of the novels that I've read and the cinema, which is that appreciation for stillness, that appreciation for the unfolding moment, for the sense of the beauty of the passing moment. You know, in Ozu in Tokyo Story, he does these cutaway shots of just, you know, a train passing by. But the train's not just passing by, very simply. It's actually laying hold of a moment, like Basho would grab hold of a moment. And that's something that has influenced me greatly. I'm a meditator. I'm not a Zen meditator, but this sense of the ineffable moment, this sense of the stillness and the deep quiet that lies behind everything, and the general impermanence of life, that we're here but for a moment, and then we're gone. And it's something that it really affected me aesthetically. My writing is full of it. I don't know if a Japanese person would recognize it because it's gone through the filter of an Irishman, but it's there. Like Prophet Song is full of moments of that sense of just this of the now, that sense of in the unfolding moment, the beauty of the passing moment. Eilish Stack, this woman being imprisoned in the unfolding of her story. And this is how we live our lives, that when we live, we're always in the now, we're always right up against the future. We're always alienated from the future. There is no knowing, there's no certainty. My book, Beyond the Sea, which was the book prior to this, which is in a way a very, very Zen novel, is fundamentally about this concept of being completely immersed in the present moment, of allowing the detritus of life to just disappear, and to get closer again to this essence, to this sense of something deeper within us, the stillness. And that book was very influenced by Basho. I read a lot of Basho at that time, to sort of distill something. And I created little rules when I was writing that book. The haiku's not in the text, but the ghost of it is in the text, in novelistic form. That sense of a moment of seizing hold of reality, that idea of like just literally seizing hold of reality, and in the moment of seizing it, bringing it onto the page. So this sense of passing life, that sense of an unfolding has somehow been brought onto the page. My previous 3 novels, I would tend towards a more elaborate description. And I created this rule, which I kind of called it the Basho rule, but it was a rule for myself in my writing, in this novel. Any description had to be one sentence, but it also had to contain an unfolding of some kind. The book opens at a point of loss, of everything that has been known up to this point is going to be lost, which is an entire world, which in a certain way is also a civilization, because the book opens in Dublin, in a liberal democracy, in a world that I live in a world that many of us know. And the symbolic anchoring for this is there on the first page with the cherry trees. This is a sort of a motif that will run throughout the book a little bit, very quietly. Trees are rooted in the garden, and the garden is in the home, and this is life. This is who we are. This is the center of family life. It's the center of the personal within the world. But of course, the book then uproots the trees, so to speak. The book is an unraveling, but it begins very much in the modern day, in the world of the now that we all know. And, you know, we are conditioned by our conditioning. We think that everything that we've known all our lives is that which is going to be, is that which is going to continue, that which has been is always going to be. It's a very dangerous idea. What this book is demonstrating is the mythic structure of human life, which is collapse and reconstruction. That is historically the mythic structure of life. Civilizations come and go, countries come and go. In the West in particular, where I live, in Ireland, we like to believe that our liberal democracies are a permanent thing. That's a very dangerous idea, because we can see now that for example, that they are under siege, that something has changed in the political structure or the political climate of life. And Ellie Stack is, in the opening of this book, is one of us, as somebody who is in her 40s, in the squeeze of life, you know, 3 teenage children, an infant child, a career as an executive for a pharmaceutical company, a husband who works as a teacher's trade union, which is in Ireland is a very powerful trade union. That's a lot to hold in one space. How are you supposed to, at the same time, watch the unraveling, to analyze the unraveling, to read what is truly happening at the level of the political? Because what's happening is not just political. It's epistemological. It's the unraveling of reality. It's the unraveling of how we read the world. It's the unraveling of what we might call, you know, objective reason, how we can all agree on facts, how we can all agree on what things mean, on the sort of the consensus of reality. This thing is coming undone. But it's happening quietly, and meanwhile we're all busy leading our lives. At the start of this novel, there's a knock on the door, and suddenly the secret police, the GNSB, have knocked on the door, are knocking at her door, and suddenly entering her life, entering the family's life. And up until this point, the Irish state doesn't even have a secret police. And now suddenly something has changed. And so what's happened in the background is, before this novel opens, a populist government has been elected. And that government has very quietly started to undo constitutions, started to undo democratic norms. So social freedoms are starting to be altered. The media is starting to be curbed. But everybody is busy with their lives. Process of thought where people think, yeah, but it's not going to happen here. They're not going to allow this to happen. Who is not going to allow it to happen? That's a good question, because once this book begins, it's already happened. And Eilish and everybody else in it actually start to wake up, because what happens is the unraveling. The book demonstrates the unraveling of modern life, the logic of collapse. This book constantly holds the mirror of truth up to the reader and says, this is how it is. This is how it unfolds. We're not covering anything up here. We're not trying to pretend that it's something easier than this. Because when a society that is used to its freedom starts to lose its freedom, there's a certain logic to what can happen. And the world comes undone, and Ellie Stack wants to cling to the past, and she wants to save her family, but more importantly, she wants to deny reality. Lots of people thought that, you know, when they read Prophet Song, that this is a work of political fiction. And I always say, I don't work like that. I don't think like that. My lens is just so much broader, because political fiction is a very narrow way of looking at the world. Writers who write political fiction know what they want to change. They know what the outcome is. And so they write towards a certainty, they write towards an improvement. But I think that serious literature, great literature, must aspire towards something different. The opposite of certainty. Not grievance, but grief. That which we cannot know, that which we can never lay hold of. She realizes that this idea of cataclysm, this idea of the end of the world, that she has grown up hearing, it's just a story. But actually the end of the world is something that happens again and again and again and again. It's an eternal reoccurrence, because the end of the world is always local.
Yeah.
And this is what she realizes. The end of the world is always a local event. It comes to your city, it comes to your town, it knocks on your door, and it comes into your house, and is the end of the world for you and your family and your community and your people. And the rest of us, we watch it on the news. And so, what we see on the news, we think of it, well, that's war. We think that, well, maybe they brought it on themselves. We think that maybe this just simply has to be. But actually, it's worth reconsidering the idea that when you're trying to sleep under the stairs with your children because there's missiles being fired onto your house, that is what the end of the world actually is. You may feel something that's worth getting. Like we go to tragedy to get catharsis, to have something unburdened from us. And, a book like this, the best way to conceive of it is that you're staring into Medusa's mirror. You're staring into a mirror that allows you to stare at the face of Medusa without turning to stone. And we need to see the Medusa. We need to know what the abyss looks like. We need to know what the nightmare actually looks like so that we can actually appreciate what we have now. Because, the extraordinary thing is this thing we've created, what we call civilization. Very delicate thing, and it's just a little veneer. And it's so easy for it to come undone. And, for us to embrace what we call the better angels of our nature, higher aspirations of humankind, for us to create our civilizations, for us to have human rights, and for us to recognize the suffering of other people. These are noble ideas. But what's in human beings is also the opposite. The tribal instinct, the irrational, things that we evolved with over great periods of time that allow us to survive, but are much less useful in a modern world. But they're still there. Civilization is the ideal, but tribalism is the instinct. We are deeply tribal. And tribalism is the source of so much conflict. Writing is dancing the muse in a certain way, And I was writing the wrong novel for about 6 months. And the interesting thing is, I knew that I was writing the wrong novel because the story was not moving in the way that the story should. I'm a storyteller. The way I conceive of the novel is I want it to be dangerous. I want it to push to the edges of the line. I'm not hitting it. I'm not playing safe. I'm not hitting it down the center of the court, so to speak, to use a tennis metaphor. I'm playing it to the edges. My stories are dangerous. They're asking big questions. But at the same time, I'm telling stories. It's so important. One story should be able to contain all these ideas and should be able to be read as a story. I just thought, it was a Friday and I thought, I'm done. I'm just closing this, and I put it into a folder and hid it from myself. And I thought, sometimes it's important not to finish things. Sometimes you have to know when something is a sunk cost and you have to say, this is not the story. But I had this feeling that something else was waiting. And, as a novelist, I live with what I call the door into the dark. I imagine it as something back here, and it's really subconscious. I don't just mean the subconscious, it's just something that we can't see, but that there are so many aspects of mind that are so enriching and beyond conscious recognition. This symbolic imagination resides in unconsciously. Creativity comes through subconsciously. And this door into the dark, you can't see into it. You don't know what's going to come through, but things emerge. And what's very beautiful is the things that come through are so much wiser and deeper and more aware than just our conscious sort of egoic self as we go through our daily lives trying to get from A to B, that there is a richer dimension to all of us. And so when I wrote the first page of this book, it happened on the next Monday morning. I just sat down and created an open page, and I had no idea what was coming. But the door opened and I just wrote the first page, and I knew. I looked at it and I went, there it is. And it resonated, and I knew I had a novel. This is a difficult question for me to answer because as a writer, I set down the tale. And the tale is there for the taking. The tale is there to be interpreted. It's there to be felt. It's there to be experienced. It's a work of, in a certain way, symbolic imagination. But what I will say is that I've noticed that this book seems to travel well. That I have been in many different continents, I've traveled to many different countries and traveled to festivals where the book has already been translated. And so I've met many readers from different cultures. And so many people have said to me, this is my book, this is our book. That there's something within this story that's telling something that's very unique to us. I can recognize myself in Japanese fiction too. And perhaps it's the same too for Japanese readers, that there is a core of humanity among all of us. And that this is what writing and translation does. It reminds us that it's really, we live in one world, not many worlds.
難しく見えるんですけども、実際読み始めるといろんな声が聞こえてくるので、まずナレーターの声から始まって、そしてそこに主人公のエイリッシュがまず出てくるんです。そしてドアがどんどんって叩かれて、それで来訪者が来ると。で家の中には子どもたちがいるっていうふうに場面が浮かんできて声が聞こえてくるので、それに忠実にちゃんと聞き取れば日本語になるっていう感じでやりました。彼の英語は非常にその音楽性があるんですね。ぐーっと伸びていくところとか畳みかけていくとか、それから声が変わるとかっていうその変化を日本語で同じような効果をどうやったら出せるかってことは常に考えて訳しました。2ページ半ぐらいピリオド来ないところあるんですけど、それは日本語で長いセンテンスを谷崎潤一郎みたいに書くことはできますけど、それをやるとこのスピード感とか切迫した感じが消えてしまうので、反対に短く切って畳みかけるみたいなやり方を使って英語の効果を日本語に移すっていうようなことを考えて楽しく翻訳できました。この一番最初に国家緊急憲法っていうふうに訳したんですけど、国難っていうような言葉に訳したものが出てくるんですけど、これ今この国が大変な事態なので、その憲法をちょっとサスペンドして、それでその治安維持警察に権限を与えるっていうような特別な法案が9月に通って、で話が起こるのは11月の終わりの頃で、それからクリスマスにかけてっていう設定なんですけど、これは日本でもありえないと思いたいけどありえないことではないので、ヨーロッパやアメリカの人たちよりも僕らが読んで何か遠い感じがするっていうことは多分ないと思って読んだし訳しましたね。複数の書評家がこれをパラブルだっていうふうに言ってるんですね。名付けているって、その一種の例え話のような偶話のようなものとして読めるんじゃないか。で扱われているその世界というのは、ディストピア的な、あってほしくないような世界ですけれども、それを体験させることを、つまりこのイマーシブな読者がその中に浸ってしまうような、で終わった時には難民になってるんですけど、それを経験することによってこの物語を自分の物語になってほしくないけどバーチャルにそれを経験できるっていうところがこのお話の特徴だと思うので、現実に経験したくないことを紙の上で経験しておくのは意味があることではないかっていうふうに翻訳して感想を持ちました。大変嬉しい光栄だなと思って、やはりこのシリーズは今現代生きてるっていうことと読むっていうことがつながるようなものを中心にこれからやっていくっていう話の一段にこれ選んでいただいたっていうことで、さっきのパラブルの話ですけど、私たちが日本人として読んで多くの人が自分の物語として浸れるものであるっていうことは確信していて、原作がそうなので、翻訳がそれを裏切ってないということをただ祈るだけですけれども、心の中で声に出して読むと分かってくるので、ぜひ投げ出さないでちょっと声に出して読むということをしてみていただくと、もう気が付いた時には入り込んでいる。翻訳もそうだといいなと思いますので、皆さんちょっと試してみていただければありがたいなと思います。